of the order of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Morgenaro.
Here.
Mr. Grady.
Here.
Mr. Holmes. Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Paradise.
Here.
Mr. Hernandez.
And the audience, I think everybody's upstairs. So I can have a motion to approve the minutes of our 2022 regular meeting. So move. Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Old business. We're going to discuss the volunteer fire department parking lot funding. We did get a financial report. If everyone looked at it, it is a 2020 Form 990.
Doesn't look like a full money.
Not that I'm- Well, Jeff is here. Jeff, thank you.
Yeah.
One thing you might want to go back, it's about 6 or 7 8 is what actually makes up the 170,000. Because as you think about, there was discussion last time whether there should be some shared cost element. It's page 11. So if you were to go on page 11, you'd see cash and savings just shy of $35,000. That's page 11 of the 994. About 35,000 of cash and savings, and about 121, almost 122,000 of investments, but 112,700 is the net value of the land and building. So even though they may have those assets, that's a little bit, the net number is a little bit misleading because you've got almost 113,000 of the building, which can't really serve a purpose here other than potentially collateral if they wanted to borrow. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that there are assets, but what those assets are matters in a circumstance.
The liabilities of the mortgages on the building grant.
Yeah, if you look down in the liability section on page 11, there's 97,252 of a mortgage, secured mortgage and notes payable.
Yeah, I sent you 2019 as well.
Yeah, I didn't include
The latest.
I didn't because they have prior year on the 20, so it has 19 and 20. It has definitely gone down. The net assets went from 178 to 171.8. And this was 8-9 months into COVID. So I'm presuming like everything else, it continued to deteriorate through COVID, unfortunately.
Well, we didn't have hall rentals. That's a big kind of one of our money.
So I guess I'll have Jeff here if you have any questions or stuff. The investments, where are those?
So the department received back in approximately 2000 and I want to say 2006, 2007, we received basically a former member who had passed away bequeathed approximately $50,000 to us at the time. It was a division of their assets, 50,000 with the fire department, other monies went elsewhere. And at the time, it was decided that that would be invested in a long-term investment, American funds type investment. That would be something that we could rely on in the future to maintain the building. So a lot of people, certainly the public, not necessarily the present company, but certainly the public, don't realize that the town does not own the building, nor do they own the land. Right? We take care of all of those things. So if the roof needs to be replaced, that is on us. The door breaks, the whatever. Our air conditioning in the hall is from 1995. It's 27 years old. We're now in the process of replacing. So the idea of the long-term investment into the American funds stock, type option was for future planning. It was to allow us to have access to some monies that we could assist with larger projects. Now, the issue with the parking lot is that I really can't for all intents and purposes, I can't use that for parking because we would be empty. I would have no other way to fund anything beyond $500 here, $800 here. There's just simply no way to do that. We took out $20,000 just to do the air conditioning, and the guy gave us a break. The job that we're getting done is probably $40,000. He luckily took basically the labor out of it to give us a break. That funding right now is probably with the stock market the way it is, and I could produce an updated report if I need to. It's probably about $99,000. It's probably roughly that amount. So the problem is, and again, I'm all for shared, sacrifice and things like that, and we can certainly discuss that. But the problem is I utilize all of that money, and the quotes we had were in the 150, 110 range. We get a little bit lower with the town kind of backing. Is again leaving us with nothing. So
And you would lose that $5,000 investment, you got coming in every year, the money for that too. You're pulling in about $5,000 a year as far as interest payments.
yeah.
Using that to pay the parking lot would actually cost you more money every year.
Right. And it's gone up, it's gone up and it's gone down. It's down now. Of course, it's gone up and down, but the other thing is we did discuss, I know it was briefly discussed here, there's a mortgage still on some of the hall rental, or I'm sorry, the hall portion of the building that was, I want to say, renovated back. I mean, that mortgage goes back into the 90s, I was like mid 90s. We still pay on that, we still pay on that as part of the rent payment that we get from the town. It's included with our rent payment, which we get from the town is $21,000 roughly. From that. So, I'd love to have that account have $300,000 in it. We can take care of it ourselves. We just have no option to fund this. We really don't. At the end of the day, I just can't take that money and throw it on the driveway and just say, oh, great, we're all set, and have absolutely nothing left. That's what we're, that's what, and we had worked. A little bit of the backstory is we had worked for a number of years, 4 or 5 years with Donna's previous person in the state there, trying to get state bonded monies for this. And unfortunately, it never, we were hoping to get some monies from that, but unfortunately that never happened. So this has been a project that I think I've worked on at least for 5 years. Yeah, I say at least for 5 years. This has been going on. So.
How much do we give the fire department?
I actually, a specific number, I want to say,
56,000.
total between the 3 departments, the one that we don't. the
South
three that we don't-
Kensington owns their building. We get about 21 times 30. So.
I want to say the operating reimbursement is about 70,000 in the budget. Total between the 3 other.
It's a quarterly payment. I think it's $5,500 a quarter. So roughly 20.
And then we pay, obviously, we put the equipment in there, the equipment that the folks are using, the SCBA equipment to loan out for a few years ago.
Yeah, and true firefighting equipment, apparatus, gear, things like that is separate from what we would consider the building, where the building is owned by the membership essentially.
So in the one that we're looking at here, so the government grants line 30,000. Is that this town of Berlin?
I believe that is, yes,
Government?
correct, yes,
Just us?
yes. And there's other reimbursements that we've gotten. So there's a cable bill that they used to reimburse. We don't do that anymore because we've got it on state fiber, but there were some other, and we have actually reduced some of those costs because that Comcast reimbursement that we were getting, we no longer get. So there are some things that reduce those costs.
And you're stuck being the treasurer.
I'm also stuck being a treasurer, unfortunately. I would have to show up here either way, but yes, unfortunately, I started that way long ago and I just held on to it. So,
I share your pain, the
Yeah.
treasurer for a few organizations.
Yes.
I did speak with Mike Byrne, the public works director, just point blank asked, I said, is the driveway really that bad? So if this was a town road or town piece of property, we would take it down to the base and rebuild, which is why he obtained 3 quotes. They're recommending using Galasso, that's the company the town uses for the roads. They do a very good job with it. He recommended going with the higher cost item, the 78,950 item just because of the quality of where it is right now. Really wanted to go down.
The
Plus,
biggest vehicle is about 85,000 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, so turning and things like that, that's definitely. But then we believe the driveway was last done potentially back into the 80s, if not even longer. So it's possible it was actually done in the 70s. So if you were to walk the property, I've been out there with Donna, I've been out there with a couple of the town council members. You know, there's just some potholes, we've done patches, we've done repair. The town has been gracious enough to come out with some hot patch, things like that, and that lasts a year or two. Come through with the plow, and that's about it. So
the only other thing I'll add is we did have a conversation with the town attorney, and we can, obviously, we spoke last time, that the town has the right to do this with public funds because of the nature of the service that's provided and the town's equipment in there. But there is also the opportunity for the town to, he can draft contract and agreement with the town is now ultimately on the hook. So if somebody gets hurt there or something like that, no, this is not going to be a town driveway or town parking lot just because the town does the work.
the fire department has its own policies under the fire service.
So would we be giving the money to the fire department or paying itself?
We have the option. It's really the town's option. The attorney said we could do it. And we could grant the money and then the fire department could contract with law. So I did talk to Mike about this as well. And he said, from a practical matter, make it easier for them since they have the relationship to have the agreement to do this and manage it because the town would very likely be involved. And we have the expertise of people who are actually doing this or managing Galasso roads and parking lots all over the town.
And I'm up to either I can manage, we can assist or the town can, that doesn't really.
So that's really to be determined, but it wouldn't really affect the dollars, and the attorney said he can work it so that we're not legally exposed.
Yeah, and our interest really is just that it gets done the right way and with the apparatus. And we, you know, there's things like scheduling. So they're going to come in on day one and remove everything. So the apparatus has got to be shifted out. There's things like that. So there's a little bit of a few periods where stuff would have to be moved, but that's about the biggest project management piece of it. It's pretty straightforward. It's remove and pave what's there. It's not, you know, so.
If the town did it, obviously there would be close coordination.
Yeah, I've talked to Mike and Mike said, yeah, we'll meet with them. That's the biggest thing is just having some communication meeting with them. Are we good? Are we, you know, schedules?
Council hasn't taken any action.
The council asked for your recommendation or recommendations of the best way to fund this. I did in the motion list a few things. One is it could be included in the 24 capital budget. That would obviously defer it for a period of time. Not ideal given the conditions are in, but it could be done and then just embedded in the next budget cycle. You could propose a non-budget appropriation and say you simply take money out of savings to do this. You could utilize general fund operating surplus given the time of year. That one is probably 3 is probably preferable to 2 only because why appropriate fund balance if you were going to put money in, just appropriate the surplus instead of putting it back. It's just actually easier, it's just a transfer rather than a non-budget appropriation town meetings and the like. So those were some ideas. I know, George, you had mentioned Kensington Fire District. I think there's some differences in makeup of those, but there could be anything. If there's other ideas, these are just ideas. I have ways I know we have funded other things. So that was the council was trying to look for some advice on how best to fund the project.
And surplus would probably be the best route.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's 78,000.
No, I know.
impact, but if you look at the latest figures from last month, I think surplus looks like it's more than what we said last month.
Yeah, I mean, some of the numbers I sent out were before the final payroll accrual, so, but it's still going to be decent. I think the thing that's probably the biggest risk, one of the things I had talked about in the plan last month was if there's funds available, moving forward to purchase the 4th fire vehicle, there's the potential that maybe that erodes into that. It's still unknown how much that was going to cost, because it still has to be spec'd out and determine what it is. That one,
We still have issues there about time of delivery too.
exactly.
We don't even know if we can buy a fire truck.
Oh, you can buy it. It's just going to take probably 2.5 years before we see. We won't see those 2 that we just bought until March of 23 to probably April of 23, so almost a year.
I wouldn't want to say this bumping any of the priority items that we've already discussed in terms of the capital list or things that we're going to go into the year. We could always put it into next year's budget. No one's going to like that because all of a sudden we're starting with a budget that's X dollars higher, but I think we do our priority list on the equipment for a reason. This would just be another item to add to the list.
But we are ahead of schedule on the fire. Truck.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
We're, you know, we may have to just
It's
go
not
back
gonna
half
bump, you know,
and half with fire trucks like we've been doing.
yeah, and we still
We
have
jumped
time
on
to
that
do.
one, you know, because we had the opportunity to buy it, but maybe we gotta go back to buy it, you know,
Well, based on,
half a fire truck every year, kind of, more or less.
based on the list that we talked about. So,
I think it's very likely. Well, we're finalizing the last bills right now, putting together the last payroll, so. I expect in the next meeting to be able to come forward to the council with some of those items, transfers to try to fund them. And if we're able, as you recall, that the fourth level is actually the police cruisers. So I think there's an opportunity potentially to appropriate $100,000, including contingency, so that to get this done.
here's my opinion, I mean, for what it is, it's been out there for a long time, trying to get this done. It's our equipment, it's our volunteers that are doing it, we know it's not our problem. I feel, you know, we should fund $75,000, and if there's a contingency aspect of it, if there's higher fund, and we could absorb that contingency. We would cover the baseline
I think that's reasonable. Yeah, that's reasonable.
cost.
That sounds good. And the parking lot, I actually drove down, it's worse than I could imagine.
Yeah, when the engines alone are 45,000 pounds, and the tower alone is probably close to 88,000. So it's just,
That thing ain't gonna make it another winter.
I don't want to say that, but
Yeah.
you know, I'm hoping we get this done, you know, early fallish, you know, but I don't want to say that, so, because if it doesn't get done, we have to kind of.
Any other comments?
If that's the consensus, then put the list together of transfers and bring to council. I put this on for the 75,000, assuming they approve it, it would then come to you with the whole list. If the feeling at that time is don't do it, then we can certainly vote against it. We definitely don't have to go in favor of it. But that way it would actually put it out there, rather than waiting longer to select the council. Here's the idea, we'll just put it on the list, and this would be the recommendation, is the consensus of the Board of Finance, and see what the council thinks, and then they adopt it, they pass it, bring it back
We're
here.
really talking about the 79,000. Not the 75.
78.
49.
I mean, I can put 80,000 and just go around and say,
Just make sure we got.
Pavement, asphalt's changing, rest changes.
thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Moving on
Talk to the phone.
New business. Everyone make a-
Sure, move to appropriate a $128,205 steep grant for Kensington Sidewalks Project Phase 3, the steep sidewalks account in the economic development fund.
Second,
So,
discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to a non-budgeted appropriation, $288,000 from the outside police services account to the extra duty police officer account, both in the general fund.
Second,
second,
discussion.
Kevin, one of these is a revenue account and one is an expenditure account. Just want to make that clear.
We pay for when the police, you probably have seen in several places around town, even today, I saw two of them just driving Kimberly back. The police officers who were there at the construction sites, the private groups, CNP, Eversource, et cetera, pay for that. So we pay the officers out of the extra duty police officer expenditure account. we take in the revenue through outside police services. The police attempts to budget based on history, what that's going to be, so that's embedded in the general fund budget. To the extent we have more collections than expected, we take in more revenue, have more expenditures. There is also a 12% markup, so the revenue will always exceed the expenditures there. And so this was from early, was to do a non-budget appropriations on a meeting approach. We are actually north of 300,000 over budget, the expenditures, but that's, when you budget about 3 grand and you're doing about 600,000, tells you the amount of projects that we've done around town.
I think for clarity, minutes, the revenue account should be identified as a revenue.
So it's
So
outside
that some,
police,
so someone reading minutes,
outside
you know,
police services.
they may
revenue.
think we're just going from one expenditure account. Rather than expenditure.
So it's outside police services revenue, extra duty police officer expenditure.
All in favor?
Aye. Move to transfer $121,200 as detailed on the accompanying spreadsheet, cover higher than budgeted expenditures and identified accounts. Okay,
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Move to approve transfer from the non-taxable election workers account, $11,383.30 to the elected personnel account, $11,000. Workers' compensation account, $41.80, and social security account, $841.50 to fund a one-time payment to both registrars and voters. Second? Okay, can we get a little background?
Yes, please.
I'm not giving an opinion on this, I'm just laying the facts. Because there was only one referendum, there was money left over in the non-taxable election workers account. That account is for all the people who work at the polls. The IRS says that if you work at the polls or in training immediately surrounding election day, the income that you're paid, it's a modest amount, but the income that you pay is not taxable. It's hence the account. The registrars have asked for some of that money, half of it, to be transferred into the election workers account, which is the account from which we pay the both Republican and Democrat registrar voters. They are each paid $36,000 per year. And they're asking for $5,500, and $11,000 plus the fringes that go with it, as a one-time payment. They identified in the agenda item as an acknowledgement for additional workload redistricting, voter roll cleanup, and total reorganization of registrar's office.
Kevin,
Yes.
I got a question. I don't mean to sound like a wise guy, but why would we do this? I vote to give every member of the Board of Finance $5,000 bonus. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem right to me.
They requested this transfer, the town manager, I had a conversation with the town manager, because obviously it has to be approved to move forward. The registrars, unlike, you guys obviously are elected, but unlike anybody else who might be within the budget, paid within the budget, because they are still paid within the budget, they technically don't work for the town manager. So upon the advice of the town attorney, really, they ultimately, the deciding factor should be, or deciding group should be the town council as the top legislative body of town. So the town manager moved it forward, it was a request they made, he moved it forward to allow the town council the opportunity to weigh in, because he didn't feel it was appropriate for him to make that decision. Originally, this amount was larger. In some conversations, there was a decision to cut the requested half, which is what you see here. The council did take this up at their last meeting, and we did vote to move it forward. I did receive a phone call from someone who questioned whether all the members of the council necessarily understood what the motion really represented. And that is why the motion you're looking at, is slightly different than what Hazel had. I added to fund a one-time payment to both registrars and voters. It wasn't actually written, it was exactly $841.50 pending approval from the Board of Finance. I wanted to make sure it was clear to everybody what you're funding, not with the intent of voting for or against, just to make sure you, because somebody called me and said, we're not sure. I didn't speak with any council member. I don't know if that's true, but just to avoid even that possibility with any of you, I wanted to make sure you understood that is what it is.
You're saying we don't know if they understood what they approved.
That was
Are they
relayed.
on board with it?
I don't know. That was relayed. It wasn't relayed by a council member. It was relayed by somebody else who questioned the council member and then asked.
When I see some of this stuff here, it seems to me this is all stuff that's part of their job to do. I don't understand how this is additional, voter roll cleaning. I mean, it seems to me that that's a normal function.
Redistricting is a once every 10-year event. I don't know how much effort time they put into it.
It's still,
In reorganizing the office. I mean, that
That's
happens
a
all the
different
time.
story.
it's, I'm looking at this and this is, I understand they do a lot of work, and when they're really busy. But this is a $36,000 part-time job. And I'm not all that hot about giving somebody a giant bonus. Yes, one shot. I think a much lower number would be more palatable. But I'm not comfortable with that.
I think that when we went through the budget process, the registrars actually asking for
Yeah, right.
$10,000 a piece or something. I don't know. They were asking for a raise.
Yeah,
Town manager only made $1,000. It's a combination of probably extra work and maybe what they think that should be getting paid.
The town manager did ask for benchmarks, comparisons of what others have paid. And based on what he received and based on his conversations, he did not feel that it warranted the increase. Part of the argument they made for that increase is they are required to become certified within a certain number of years. That is a new state law requirement, so the predecessors did not necessarily need that. They also made the argument, I'm saying this is valid, but one of the arguments was the predecessors have the ability to purchase beyond the town insurance policy, which was the town certain amount of money. One did if they and the other did not. So there was a cost. And when the decision was made to no longer offer health insurance as an option for the part-time workers, typically, as a town employee, you have to work 30 hours or more to qualify for health insurance. And so they don't work 30 hours a week. One of the arguments was that they would save considerable money on behalf of the town in the budget. I don't necessarily find
Can you
that.
be more specific?
Well, if you had in the budget $25,000 because a person was purchasing health insurance, and now that was no longer eligible, we would take that health insurance funding out of the budget.
That's not.
That was their rationale for requesting, part of the rationale for requesting the increase.
Okay.
The additional work, certifications, the reduced cost in other areas would translate into an opportunity at a higher wage.
How about this part that says total reorganization resulting in implementing cost savings? You know what those cost savings are?
I'm not familiar with all of the pieces. I do know they did make the decision. It's going to sound a little funny, but there's actually a lot of merit to this. Prior to the arrival of two current registrars, the town would actually activate phones at each of the sites for the election. There's an activation cost and there's a cost to have them operating. They actually looked at it and implemented a system of using cell phones, which allowed them to save money. So
2022.
they have requested, and it was, I know they did it for this budget season and they requested in the previous one in both instances, reevaluating the budget submission and determining what the overall increase was and trying to keep that down. The town manager made the decision to remove the requested increase. The $1,000 increase every 2 years has been a standard practice for several years. So every 2 years in January, we receive an increase, and their predecessors have the same thing.
It was, you say they're part-time, is there a mandated minimum hours that they work? or-
There is not, they do have stated hours, they have a sign up for those who will be there. There is no authority for anyone, including the mayor or the council. Nobody has authority to tell them when to be here, other than obviously during the election period, they're required to be here for their electoral duties. But other than that, there are no specific minimum requirements. The town was established when the health insurance was offered several mayors ago. The stipulation was we would provide you health insurance. At that time, 20 hours was the minimum for town employees. And they said, in order for you, we will give you health insurance if you commit to working, having stated hours and being available 20 hours a week for residents, for those who can come in and avail themselves of your service. I believe there was also a requirement that they had to have some period of the Thursday nights, the hall was open late, so that residents could come in and do what they needed to do. That's become a little bit less necessary because so much is online now. But there are a lot of people who just don't even need to come in and do the work.
Well, it makes it so hard to figure the whole scope of compensation. You're talking $36,000 and you really don't even know what they're putting in hours on the base level.
But not
And
enough
now
to
we're gonna-
qualify as part-time.
Yeah, and now we're gonna give, 15% on top of what was already known to be what the salary was for the year.
That's, I mean, maybe, I think it's just that 15% that's bothering me. I mean, I don't feel comfortable going forward with that much money. I just, this is an election that you basically pick to do this, knowing what it is.
Any other
comments, Mark?
It sounds shady.
Well, I mean, I think the only thing I would say is, the town manager did not approve a budget increase during the budget process. He's recommending, this $5,000 bonus now. I mean, it just doesn't play out what I'm saying. I guess we're going to take a vote.
Yeah.
So, all in favor? Opposed?
Opposed, Mark?
I'm opposed.
I figured.
Right. Kevin?
Financial update, I'll go pretty quickly. These numbers aren't final as we continue to finalize. They continue to be strong, however. Right now, we don't have anything too huge. A couple of things changed, as you can see. We fully encumbered the legal line and since gone over it with a couple of the invoices, but nothing crazy, less than $10,000 with everything going on. Expenditures were up a little bit as a percentage of budget, but some of that has to do with the nature of the pension and fire vehicles and other things that we did during the year that are not normal. Certainly, the tax collections continue to come in strong as they have in the prior years. I will tell you, when the budget hearing happened, I broke down several areas where I anticipated taxes coming in stronger. Current year came in is about 200,000 ahead of budget. Back taxes did come in about $500,000 ahead of what I expected, as did the motor vehicle supplemental. We did increase both of those, both back taxes and supplemental, in the FY23 budget. What came in a little bit later than expected was the tax sale revenue. Still coming in with a strong FY22. So I actually see that as a positive in that as we start to deal with inflation, we're already feeling the pressure on fuel, we're feeling the pressure on auto parts and many other areas. The fact that if that money shifted into 23 is actually a positive, and it may help offset some of those other increases. So if we're over 100% the budget on the taxes and didn't necessarily get everything we thought we were going to get, it's not a terrible place to be. Health insurance and general insurance continue to perform pretty well. We did end up going with a 7.9% increase when we ended up with that. Jerry, you had asked the question, if we come in below that 10% of the budget, what do we do? So when you start to see the budget actual variances for FY 23, the first time we publish it, you are actually going to see positive variances in health insurance. I only transferred 7.9% what was actually in there. So we are going to have some favorability in the budget, which again can help if we start to feel inflationary pressures during the year. Pension fund, the information has been provided. I think we're probably about a month or two out from getting an updated liability number, but since this was based on 2.16%, that liability should come down considerably. The assets are growing, not fast, obviously, like most assets, they're not doing much. But I think the liabilities will decline much more rapidly, starting to get a much smaller unfunded liability. Most of the 2% fund projects are complete. The lighting upgrades that we need, we just get the second invoice at the end of the year. They are continuing to move forward with that. So hopefully that's going to really make the library, the media center, better for the students, teachers, and everybody involved. And the Cubbies, they're moving along. We're almost done with those at Hubbard and that work. So most of those balances are done. The board right now is probably going to end up with less than $10,000 at the end of the year return to the town. They're not going to come back to you requesting the 2% this year. So imagine that will be expended and then probably stop tracking it. The only other thing I would point out, we did unfortunately brackets return to the VNA revenue page for June. Still at decent revenue. We had projected back in the budget season about 600,000 in revenue. We finished at 614, so right around what we expected. The loss right now, you're looking at about 750,000 or so some more costs. So you're probably going to be in $750,000 to $800,000 range for loss. It's about 150,000. At 750, we were about 900,000 loss last year. So it is better year over year. Driven, we're down in revenue, but we had substantial reductions in salary. Certainly there were budgeted expectations, one nurse, one health aide, and one clerical worker. But the town manager elected to consolidate the top two positions in the VNA into one. So that represented substantial savings. And then we had some nursing turnover during the year. And during those periods of gap, we didn't pay money. The current administrator continues to employ a strategy of per diems, which is huge because municipal employees, any employee really is going to carry with it, especially factoring health insurance, quite a bit of fixed cost. So embracing the per diem model is, I think, helping. I'm not saying 750,000 loss is a good thing by any means, but at least directionally, revenue's not moving in the right direction, but the bottom line moved in the right direction this year. We just need to continue moving it in that direction.
What budget today? So lower expenses, same loss.
You asked for this, so I don't have a question.
What's your fund balance estimate?
With the surplus, I'm still in $10 million, around 11%.
That's retirement below.
That's with everything that we did earlier this year, and assuming coming back with the surplus for some of those capital items. We are hoping to continue. We're hoping to get down low enough to be able to do 3 more police cars plus the non-work part that we're looking to do. Unfortunately, we got an email from Mr. Simons yesterday. Looks like there was a car accident with one of the police cars. Really yesterday morning. Yeah. He basically said, I'm comfortable saying that this is total. I didn't even see the car, but I'm basically saying it must have been clearly total.
Well, the airbags went off, so they could come out.
Yeah, I don't know if it was one of the new cars. I haven't seen Jim the day off today, so I don't know if it was one of the new cars or one of the old cars. He has already reached out trying to find out if there were any vehicles left over, or anybody ordered and didn't pick up a vehicle, didn't get funding, whatever the case was, if we can put it back. The garage starting yesterday immediately once they got word of that also took The cars that they took in as the new vehicles, they took 3 old ones off at the same time. The garage started working on those to, in the short term, try to put those back on the road until we can find a replacement for this month. So there are a couple, nice thing about purchasing vehicles as we've done it is it does give us some of those options. Ideally, none of us would happen or anybody get hurt, you know, on the vehicle destroyed, but assuming nobody's hurt, we have some options now with the vehicles, and that's what Jim started doing. So I think it is always, of course, key to just keep up with the cycle. We had 1 year where we purchased 6 vehicles and catch up, so the idea here we can keep up the pace. So we can get school vans, fire trucks, once we catch up, we can keep up on the pacing. We are looking to take surplus dollars from the golf course and put those back into some needed capital items in the golf course. We want to start funding some of the bridge replacement projects. Those bridges really, place that becomes a public safety matter, especially the one where the car drives over. You're walking, you might be able to jump off if something happens, if you're in a cart, you know, that's not going to. Anyways.
Yep. I've obviously never seen the police in that.
But then we also, we have one of the items they would like to purchase is a Kubota. A couple of years ago, the former director of the golf course purchased a piece of equipment that can really help maintain fairways. But unfortunately, we didn't purchase the device to drive this. They tried a few different devices and they really worked. Kubota is really the one to use. And then lastly, Jerry can speak to this much or more than I can. I think the next thing that they can purchase is a pickup. They don't have it. They have an old SUV. So if they need to pick up something at the hardware store, if they need to pick up something on the grounds that really needs to be thrown into a truck, they don't have that option. And
Right now, if they take a medium-sized tree down, so regular storm damage, you have to have this little trailer, like 15 trips with it, probably where it is, where they put their branches and stuff, rather than drive a dump truck out, fill it up, and take it away. So you need a dump truck for that, you need it for plowing.
I want a bigger crib.
In the Kubota thing, if he doesn't get it, he'd have to continue what he's doing now, which is have someone else come in at approximately $5,000 to $7,000 a year to do that activity while he's got the machine that can do it sitting there.
Is that something that they can get used?
Yes, and I think that's what he's looking
Yeah. Probably even a pickup truck.
for. That's
Yeah, it's-
definitely.
I mean, because you're not putting miles on
Yeah,
it.
he's now, they do a good job with new stuff, and they're able to band-aid stuff pretty well. Guys that got it.
The other things on the list are, we'd like to replace the carpet in the library, essentially the original carpet from 32 years ago. We've probably got a month's worth out of it. The servers here in town, so that the connection will remain with all of the critical functions that have to be included in EV. And then trying to put what is anticipated to be the town's share. It's an 80-20 split with the feds to purchase senior vans. So the town will put up 20%, feds do 80%. We did this during COVID, replaced one of the buses. So it's a really good opportunity. We're looking at somewhere like $17,000 to $20,000, and then you get about $60,000 to $80,000 from the feds, and you end up with a new van and go on for many years. So we think it's a worthwhile, modest investment for the town's part, a significant move there. Those are the high items on the list, and then we'll add the $80,000 for the parking. And then if available, we can either appropriate or could also choose to assign if there's even more surplus. We could assign the money in public safety towards the fire vehicle until the final specs are completed and determine how much is going to appropriate. Those are still the priorities that we have beyond things in mind, in addition to the work they're doing at Hubbard and the vans that have been ordered. They bought 3 earlier in the year based on the budget dollars from last year that carried over, have received them, they're taking possession of that. We're still expecting to be able to receive the other 3 that you guys just approved. Hopefully, the first one starts. And all of that. So those are good progress. But that's where we're at.
The standard practice, we should be getting a report notification. I know it doesn't tell us a lot, but the standard practice, we should be at minimum getting that report for our meetings.
We should, yeah, they produced it the Thursday before their meetings, so their meetings are delayed, it may not be the same.
I think I'll pass. Give me a draft, okay? I mean, if the other month is over, just give me a draft. So I'll follow.
And whenever I receive an email, I immediately just forward the email out to all of you. If it's available for the meeting, I just try to do it as a text, it's easier for everyone. I don't want to hold up everything else you're saying if I don't have text.
Regarding item 6, I asked Kevin to put this item on here. Believe it or not, budget discussion on the next budget cycle commences around September timeframe. Yeah, so I wanted to be able to talk about maybe getting together early, with the Board of Education, town manager, and setting up guidelines, possibly hearing their concerns. I think we got to look at priorities. I think the other part of it is, and we've been saying, don't do that, for the last few years, but we may have to change that approach too. With, we have some major capital items that we have to worry about. So I just wanted to kind of get it going early in the process so that there's some communication, and maybe we can give some guidelines from the Board of Finance standpoint. Maybe we could also say, give us scenarios, budget scenarios, which they don't do. That's the estimate process. So, the intent was to really get together with the town Board of Education, probably have the town council and mayor involved, start this process early. So that we can provide our input and listen to their input. So I think what I want to do, Kevin, is probably sit down with the DOE leadership, town manager himself, and have that discussion, and then figure out when we can set up a meeting sometime. I don't know if it's September, early September, September. I know you guys start giving direction in early September.
We typically send it out by end of August, we send out the budget directive from the town meeting. It's usually pretty tight. We have several processes, if people want additional personnel, we ask them to fill out a fairly simple form, but they ask, what are you looking for? Hi, tell us what, we ask that one question, what is the reason these bears should fund? Just tell us why the position should be done. We also review capital, we have that whole process. And then I will tell you just for your own knowledge going in, you can think of basically personnel costs, contractual wage increases, health insurance and the like. Between the town and the Board of Ed, it's typically about $2.5 million coming into the year. That's basically the equivalent right now. We have reval coming up. Right now, that's equivalent of about $1 million coming in. It would require about 3 to 3.5% economic increase to absorb something. We've had a lot of growth, but 3% is quite substantial. And 3% in Connecticut is extremely high these days. It's not a Berlin thing. Berlin's actually growing more than almost any other town in Connecticut. But even with that, we grew about 3% last year. And that's good, as you guys all know, drive around town, and that was 3%. So you can't repeat that every single year. There's not plans to repeat that kind of growth every single year. You want to do so many steel boulevards in any town.
But a lot of those are going to be coming online as their tax abatements expire. They're going to be jumping up every year too. So there's that to look forward to.
Yep. It's just a matter of figuring out how do we constrain that, because if you're stepping into the budget knowing that contractual increases, health insurance, those things are going up nil, to keep it flat, or even if you said I want to no more than half a mil or something like that, that's pretty restrictive. But I applaud the effort, because it would be great to have that guidance going in. The discussions are much easier to happen in November, December, January, February, before you even get to you guys, and trying to do all of those discussions in March when you're trying to build a budget.
We stay constrained on the capital side. What's the debt service reduction like?
I didn't bring the chart.
This is on the top of your head.
You're probably looking at about The debt level is gonna come down about 5 million a year. Your debt service right now is probably gonna decline 200,000 to 400,000 a year. You get to 2020, after fiscal year 2026, you drop $1 million, because now one of those tranches is completely gone. Skip, if I recall correctly, you'll skip 1 or 2 years, then you have about 2 or 3 years in a row dropping $750,000 to $1 million each year. So once you get out of Mark, every meeting, you talk about 2026. I mean, that's sort of the magic year when you got 3 more fiscal years, then you start really seeing those numbers come down. The big bonds that were taken out, you had, the high school project, you had other acquisitions, Pistol Creek, and others. Those really don't come online until mid-2030s. Think about it, 2013, 14, 15 is when they were taken up in 20-year bonds. So that's why we tried to shrink the bond life to 10 years, 12 years, especially during low interest rates, where you're saving on the interest, you have a little bit more principal and reduce the time. But those bonds, you're probably looking at 3 more years, times 2 to 400,000 if we stay constrained.
Discussion on this. Let's make a motion to adjourn. Second. Favor? Aye. Thank you.
Aye.